Hi, I'm Mackenzie.
Hey, I'm Denise, and welcome to the podcast from Rundown to Renewed.
We're going to be referencing some things from the book The Storm Inside by Sheila Walsh, and we recommend that you purchase this to go deeper into the specific topics that we're talking about.
Yeah, so a great verse for you to remember as we chat through our topic today. It comes from Romans 5, verses 3 to 5. It states, "We can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. And this hope will not lead to disappointment."
Wow, that's a perfect
Mm,
verse
yeah,
because
it's great.
we're going to be discussing feeling disappointed throughout this episode. And I could ask everyone to raise their hand if they've ever felt disappointed, but I know everyone would raise their hand. But have you ever like felt like your whole world was turned upside down or that you're living the opposite of what you had hoped for? It's so easy to be disappointed with even ourselves or
Hmm.
others that have created situations for us.
Right.
But what about being disappointed with God or with his plans
Mm,
that you're living in right now?
right. What has happened? What's been allowed? Yeah. I think a lot of us feel that it's wrong to say such a thing because the Christian life is supposed to be one of victory, and it is. But in these moments where disappointment takes over, then what? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of us, we want to say the right thing, the quote unquote spiritual thing, the religious thing, right? That the thing that is going to make others just shout and applaud amen. Like we want to rejoice, but what if disappointment is we have a lack of rejoicing?
Mm,
What
yeah.
happens when that sneaks in? Yeah.
I like how you said we all want to give the right answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can focus on that rather than just saying what we really feel to be true in the moment
Right.
and what we believe.
Hmm.
And, the compulsion to say and do the right thing explains why so many of us are lacking true, authentic relationships.
Hmm.
We pretend like everything is totally fine on the outside, but on the inside, we have turmoil over our circumstances that we refuse to share with anybody.
Hmm.
And when we stuff our disappointments down, they start to lurk in darkness. And this is a perfect playground for the enemy to start tormenting you.
Yeah. I mean, it's dangerous ground, right? And, we can catch our thoughts going like these. Like, have anybody ever thought any of these, right? So God answered her prayers. Why didn't
Mm.
he answer mine? I've made too many mistakes. God's just washed his hands of me. Remember that, I don't know, insert sin here that you've committed, right? That's why God's not listening. I am just one big disappointment to everyone, even to God.
Dang,
Mm,
those are lies.
all of them.
All of them are lies,
Hmm.
in case you're saying any of those.
Yeah. I think though that first one though, he answered her prayers. Like, why didn't he answer mine?
He
Like,
is answering. It's just not
it's
might be
not
in the way that you want.
right. And I think there's that one verse, I think it's in Isaiah where it talks about like his thoughts are not our thoughts and his
Right.
ways are not our ways. And so I think that's a good thing to remember when we're praying for something and we're not necessarily getting it, but we see someone else getting what we want. And it's like, what?
Hmm.
I think that's a very real.
Yeah.
And so that's a good verse to kind of revert back to in those moments.
Yeah. I think that, when we, excuse me, when we have these thoughts and everything, sometimes there's a part of us that wants to keep it from God, from
Mm,
confessing these things. And do we really believe that these thoughts will shock God
mm,
if we tell him how we truly feel?
yeah.
Because in Psalms 44:21, it actually says he knows the secrets of our hearts.
Mm.
So, are we doing our souls any good by pretending?
Yeah, that's good.
And you can see disappointment in the Bible all throughout it, right? We have Noah, who was literally the only person on planet Earth walking with God, the only one saved from the great flood.
Mm.
If you look at all the loss Job experienced, he had 10 children and they all died in an instant.
Mm.
Can you imagine? And then you have Mary and Martha, whose brother Lazarus dies, and Jesus didn't save him when they went and sent someone for him.
Mm-mm.
Not on their time, not on their timeline that they had in their head. And Paul, he faces multiple shipwrecks, stonings, beatings, and imprisonment.
Yeah, but Paul, the interesting thing about that is Paul goes through all of this turmoil, yet he's the one that wrote that verse that we just read at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the episode, right? Where in the hope, this hope will not disappoint, like will not lead us to disappointment,
Yeah.
And so I think when we are walking through a dark, hard season, if we attempt to navigate our lives by what we feel,
Mm.
we're going to just run into the rocks. We're going to be shipwrecked.
Yeah.
And so it's important to steer our lives by what we know is true, right? Like being grounded in that, regardless of how we feel, right? And so Sheila Walsh, the author of this book that we referenced, she writes this beautiful prayer in the disappointment chapter of this book. And I really wanted to read it to you guys. So it states, Lord, I didn't see this one coming. And honestly, I never would have signed up for it. Anybody felt that way?
Mm.
It feels overwhelming, but you have promised that disappointment taken to the cross will ultimately lead to hope. So I will set my heart in that direction and drag my feelings, because sometimes you have to drag them in line. I will drag my feelings in line with the morning star.
Mm. Wow. If the Lord has promised that our trials and disappointments will lead us to a strong, unshakable hope, then let's work on understanding how that process works.
Mm-hmm.
We live in challenging times, right? So pretending we're fine when we aren't will not work. We need to fight for a real faith that will hold us through our fiercest of storms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, first of all, it's important to recognize that what makes pain, any pain that we're experiencing, what makes it our enemy or our friend is how we deal with it.
Mm.
Right. And the reality is disappointment is something that we all face. And when we fail to acknowledge that, right, you're putting on the happy, good Christian face of, I don't even want to call it a Christian face because that doesn't feel right, but you're putting on this pretending face,
Right.
right? Um, it's when it's like when you do that and you fail to acknowledge this disappointment in your life, big or small, um, we're we're gonna eventually view disappointment as a disaster
Right.
rather than a chance to learn and to grow,
Mm.
a pathway to real hope, right? And I mean, we talked about John, I think it's John 16:33 last week, where it talks about like you will have troubles.
Yeah.
Jesus promises us troubles, but take heart, he's overcome the world, right? And so because of this, like we can face our disappointment and we can learn to recognize disappointment as a turn in the tide and not the end of our journey.
Mm-hmm. Why would we need hope if we didn't have any disappointments?
Right? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. Not that we like our, hoping for disappointment over here, but
Right. No, we're not.
we're not. We are human. We don't want it either.
We actually do experience disappointments
We
right alongside with you.
deeply. Yes, we'll be sharing those here shortly.
I actually feel like with relationships, you can experience disappointment, right? And like, think of any relationship that you've experienced disappointment with. It happens everywhere,
Right.
throughout your family, your friends, churches. It happens everywhere where you think that one person is a certain way and then they show you a completely different side of themselves that
Yep.
does not align with you anymore. And it's disappointing that the whole world just doesn't have peace and love.
Yeah. Why
The
can't we live in a happy land?
when people ask pageant girls like what they want in life, and they're like, peace and
World
love,
peace.
world peace. That's me. But in those moments when someone disappoints me through a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
I remind myself that everyone is 100% human, and I will discuss it with them. I'll go to them. Actually, Matthew 18 lays it all out on how to handle conflict. And I would encourage you to go to that and read those passages,
Mm-hmm.
Matthew 18:15 to 17. But it tells you to go to that person and talk to them.
Yep.
And if they don't listen, bring 2 or 3 more people along and talk with them again. And if they don't listen, go to the church. And if they don't listen, like, consider them a tax collector.
Yeah.
So the word instructs us what to do when we have disappointments in relationships. And it's so important that when we face these disappointments in life, that we always go back to God's word. What
Yeah.
is truth? What does he say about this? Because he was disappointed too.
Sure.
He knows that feeling inside of us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, like areas of disappointment that kind of sneak up on me are like I just had one the other day, where I'm just reminded that I'm the only adult running this house. And when it's just me, that's not so bad. Although sometimes it would be nice to have somebody else to do the dishes. That would be great. I gotta cook and do the dishes. Come on. But when I have my daughters, just the other day, one of them had a poster that I printed some things for, and I told her, tomorrow morning we'll put these on. And then the morning came, and I couldn't find anything that we printed, and so I had to print it again. And you're looking at you have to get breakfast ready, you got to pack the lunches, you got to get their toothbrush, you got to get them in the car to go to school, and now my computer isn't working properly or not quickly enough, right? I had to restart it, just all these things, and it's like it's just it's disappointing.
Yeah.
It's disappointing to be the only person here to not have anyone to share this load with.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up for that, you know? And most days I can handle it, but there are moments like that where
Right.
it's a reminder of a disappointment.
Right.
And so I've learned through experiencing these moments that like I have a lot of emotion built up when I have these moments, so I need to release it. So I typically like let some tears fall just so it's not like all up in my body for a
Yeah.
long time. And I ask God for his strength. And normally one of my kids, when they see me in some form of distress, they'll come over and hug me. So that's great. I'm raising empathetic, loving children. I'm here for that. And then I just keep going,
Yeah.
because that is what I'm called to do.
Right.
And you just do it.
I think about this woman in the Bible who's actually mentioned in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So
She's important.
she's important. But her story had disappointment for 12 years, where she was bleeding for 12 years. And back then, when you were bleeding, you were considered unclean. And she had used all of her money on doctors to try to fix this.
Mm.
And like nothing. She was in isolation. She was unclean, disappointed, right? That's not what she signed up for in her life. That's
No,
not what she thought her
absolutely.
life was going to look like. But when Jesus came through, she heard that Jesus was coming through town, and she was so desperate that she went. She knew that he would be able to heal her.
Mm.
And so she went into this crowd of people. And remember, she's unclean. So anyone she bumps into is now considered unclean. She touches just the robe that Jesus is wearing, the hem of his robe, and is instantly healed.
Mm,
Instantly.
mm. I love this story.
And, Jesus could have kept walking and going to where he needed to go, but he didn't want there to be any confusion on the healing that happened. And so he's like, hey, who
Who
touched
touched
me?
me?
And she's probably a little worried because she wasn't even supposed to be there. It was illegal. And he instructed her to go and be healed. And, she needed healing, not only from her bleeding, but from her mind. Think about the things that she was telling herself for 12 years. So her mind needed healing and her physical health needed healing. And I think sometimes when we limit salvation to a single act or commitment we that we make to Christ, we miss the beauty and depth of the full orbited salvation he wants to provide.
When you were saying that, I thought about the absolute like desperation
Yeah.
that she had to have. And she, because of that desperation, she went straight to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Like she knew
Yeah.
this man can heal me
Yeah.
and I will do anything. And I wonder, like, as awful as those 12 years were, they led her to such a desperate place to get to Jesus.
Mm,
And so it's like,
yeah.
can we allow our disappointments to make us desperate for Jesus?
That's my life.
Yeah.
That's my testimony in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it can relate to some of you out there too of you hit rock bottom
Yeah.
and you need Jesus in that moment.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she was at rock bottom.
Absolutely. And she wanted to be healed, but Jesus wanted to make her whole,
Mm,
right? He told her go and be healed.
yeah.
And so it's like now
It's a whole
it
process.
is.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful, that full circle of salvation.
Mm-hmm.
It's an everyday lived out experience, and he wants to set us free.
Amen.
And so now she's no longer going to be defined by an issue that she has, but by her identity as a daughter of God.
Yeah.
And I just want anyone that's walking around with, you are defining yourself by your issues.
Mm.
Like that's not, no, no, just no. I mean, I'm so serious here. Like that is not what God intended for you. He intends you because you are his daughter or his son, all of our men listeners, right? Like that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Squash any of those. I no, thank you. I no, I just don't stand for it. I don't. Um, and the thing is, though, is a lot of us carry these things around with us for years
Yeah.
and years, and we wonder like when is relief going to come? I was reading a book this morning, and she's a well-known speaker, and someone asked her to wear like a certain sort of mic for one of the audience members who needed that specific mic to hear her. Like it went into some form of earpiece for her to hear. I guess this audience member has never been able to hear a sermon or a prayer or anything. But this piece like would allow her to do it. And I guess the speaker like caught a glimpse of her in the audience, and she's just weeping because this is the first time that she's hearing a sermon. Like how much, I mean, again, there's that desperate place. And I think we can experience the fullness of Jesus in that desperate place. I know none of us want to be in a painful, desperate place. I know that. I'm aware of it. I don't want to be there either. But what if we could shift the perspective and the narrative of those desperate places and say, this place is working for me.
Right.
This disappointment that I feel, while painful, is working for me because it's leading me closer to God. I'm going to have a deeper relationship with him because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And we get it. Like we get how hard it is. We've been there. We're there shoot, we were there about a week ago with various things we were dealing with. It's so real. But but if you allow it to lead these disappointments and these heartaches and all of that to the Lord, it's not wasted. He doesn't waste any of it.
No, nothing is wasted.
Nothing is wasted. So we hope that encourages you. I just like preached a little bit there, but it's so real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, when the weight is wearisome, take this verse from 2 Corinthians 4:16-17 to heart. It says, "So do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentarily affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison."
Mm,
That was 2 Corinthians 4:16-17. If you want to look that up and meditate it on that this week.
yeah. Write that like on a post-it and put it somewhere you'll see it every day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have some closing questions here. The first one is, how do you deal with pain?
Well, my initial reaction is to just like ignore it. Run away. It's not there. But I've learned a lot in the last few years, as I've shared on this podcast many times. I've learned to just get curious about it.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you doing here? Like, what's up? What are you trying to teach me? Um, and on the days that are super painful, I let myself rest and I give myself extra grace and I tell myself we can pick back up the reins of life tomorrow.
Yep.
Today is meant for rest. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I often blame myself for it. This is a deeply ingrained belief in me that the Lord is breaking. And I started therapy a couple years ago, so that helps me to process.
Yeah.
So, if you find yourself in repeated patterns or thoughts, definitely schedule a call with one of us. Seek therapy. It's going to be
Yeah. A game
so
changer.
healing to
Mm-hmm.
break free from those things.
Yeah.
And then the second question is, what disappointments do you need to surrender to the Lord right now? And we are going to provide you with a couple minutes to do that. I'll play some music and just release those disappointments to the Lord and surrender them to Him now.
we hope that you were able to start releasing some of those disappointments. Please take more time if you need it. Journal, whatever it is that's going to help you start that process of really releasing. And a big thing I'm learning right now is when we release these things, it's also like it is an act of trust
Mm.
to God. And if you wrestle with trust, it's it's not uncommon that you'll wrestle with releasing these things. So
Yeah.
again, just like Mackenzie said, if you need extra care on these things, um, call us. We are both life coaches and we understand this process, and we would absolutely love to chat with you and work through these things with you. Um, we also, just a few closing remarks before we go about our day. We are looking to keynote speak at any women's conferences or just different women's events. And so, if you are looking for keynote speakers, we do have a guest speaker request form that you can fill out. It's in the notes. And then we have a very exciting announcement. If you've been following us on socials, you saw on Monday that we are doing from Rundown to Renewed gift boxes. Lots of awesome goodies in there. We have a link in the notes as well for that. You can purchase right from there. We will be shipping them out at the end of March. So stay tuned for that. Super exciting.
Yeah, we're very excited to just provide encouragement for someone. And you can buy this for yourself or a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll just put all their information. If it's for a friend, put your information is for you.
Yep.
And we are so excited. We're going to pray over every box before we send it and
Yep.
trust that God is going to use it however he needs to in the recipient's life. So we are excited.
Excited.
Inside there also, we have prayer cards
Mm-hmm.
that I am very excited about because we're going to go through these emotions, these feelings that we're talking about for this series. And we're going to do a prayer of how, like, to surrender that to the Lord and
Right.
be able to pray that over your life or share it with a friend that needs that prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so excited for the encouragement that will come from these boxes.
Yeah. And those are something that you could even buy like a la carte.
Yeah.
If you wanted to. There's some different options there. The full box is just an amazing resource and gift to yourself or to someone else. But there are certain things that you can also just get
Yes.
solo.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe and follow all of our podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. That helps boost it for other people to see.
Yep.
And share this episode with someone that comes to mind, someone that might be struggling with disappointment or needs encouragement.
Yeah.
If you're feeling run down,
There is space for you at our table.